Hope you guys had a great Easter. Welcome back. We are going to be reading about Chapter 8. We capture a flag. So Percy just had dinner and he's learning all kinds of things about Camp Half-Blood. Survived his first day. And now he's going on to learn about this pretty interesting, pretty intense game. The next few days, I settled into a routine that felt almost normal, if you don't count the fact that I was getting lessons from satyrs, nymphs, and a centaur. Each morning I took ancient Greek from Annabeth, and we talked about the gods and goddesses in the present tense, which was kind of weird. I discovered Annabeth was right about my dyslexia. Ancient Greek wasn't that hard for me to read, at least no harder than English. After a couple of mornings, I could stumble through a few lines of Homer without too much headache. The rest of the day, I'd rotate through outdoor activities looking for something I was good at. Chiron tried to teach me archery, but we found out pretty quick I wasn't any good with a bow and arrow. He didn't complain, even when he had to desnag a stray arrow out of his tail. Foot racing? No good either. The wood nymph instructors left me in the dust. They told me not to worry about it. They had centuries of practice running away from lovesick gods. But still, it was a little humiliating to be slower than a tree. In wrestling? Forget about it. Every time I got on the mat, Clarice would pulverize me. That would not be a fun person to wrestle. There's more where that came from, punk, she'd mumble in my ear. The only thing I really excelled at was canoeing. And that wasn't the kind of heroic skill most people expected to see from the kid who had beaten the Minotaur. I knew the senior campers and counselors were watching me, trying to decide who my dad was. But they weren't having an easy time of it. I wasn't as strong as the Ares kids, or as good at archery as the Apollo kids. I didn't have Hephaestus' skill with metalwork, or, gods forbid, Dionysus' way with vine plants. Luke told me I might be a child of Hermes, a kind of jack of all trades, master of none. But I got the feeling he was just trying to make me feel better. He really didn't know what to make of me either. Despite all that, I like camp. I got used to the morning fog over the beach, the smell of hot strawberry fields in the afternoon, even the weird noises of monsters in the woods at night. I would eat dinner with Cabin 11, scrape part of my meal into the fire, and try to feel some connection to my real dad. Nothing came, just that warm feeling I'd always had, like the memory of his smile. I tried not to think too much about my mom, but I kept wondering, if gods and monsters were real, if all this magical stuff was possible, surely there was some way to save her, to bring her back. I started to understand Luke's bitterness, and how he seemed to resent his father, Hermes. So okay, maybe gods had important things to do. But couldn't they call once in a while? Or thunder? Or something? Dionysius could make Diet Coke appear out of thin air. Why couldn't my dad, whoever he was, make a phone appear? Thursday afternoon, 3 days after I'd arrived at Camp Half-Blood, I had my first sword fighting lesson. Everybody from Cabin 11 gathered in the big circular arena, where Luke would be our instructor. We started with basic stabbing and slashing, using straw-stuffed dummies in Greek armor. I guess I did okay. At least I understood what I was supposed to do, and my reflexes were good. The problem was I couldn't find a blade that felt right in my hands. Either they were too heavy, or too light, or too long. Luke tried his best to fix me up, but he agreed that none of the practice blades seemed to work for me. We moved on to dueling in pairs. Luke announced he'd be my partner, since this is my first time. Good luck, one of the campers told me. Luke's the best swordsman in the last 300 years. Maybe he'll go easy on me, I said. The camper snorted. Luke showed me thrusts and parries and shield blocks the hard way. With every swipe, I got a little more battered and bruised. Keep your guard up, Percy, he'd say, then whap me in the ribs with the flat of his blade. No, not that far up. Whap! Lunge! Whap! Now back! Whap! By the time he called a break, I was soaked in sweat. Everybody swarmed the drink cooler. Luke poured ice water over his head, which looked like a good idea, so I did the same. Instantly, I felt better. Strength surged back into my arms. The sword didn't feel so awkward. Okay, everybody circle up, Luke ordered. If Percy doesn't mind, I'd like to give you a demo. Great, I thought. Let's all watch Percy get pounded. The Hermes guys gathered around. They were suppressing smiles. I figured they'd been in my shoes before and couldn't wait to see how Luke used me for a punching bag. He told everybody He was going to demonstrate a disarming technique, how to twist the enemy's blade with the flat of your own sword so that he had no choice but to drop his weapon. This is difficult, he stressed. I've had it used against me. No laughing at Percy now. Most swordsmen have to work years to master this technique. He demonstrated the move on me in slow motion. Sure enough, the sword clattered out of my hand. Now, in real time, he said, after I'd retrieved my weapon. We kept sparring until one of us pulls it off. Ready, Percy? I nodded, and Luke came after me. Somehow I kept him from getting a shot at the hilt of my sword. My senses opened up. I saw his attacks coming. I countered. I stepped forward and tried a thrust of my own. Luke deflected it easily, but I saw a change in his face, like, whoa. His eyes narrowed, and he started to press me with more force. The sword grew heavy in my hand. The balance wasn't right. I knew it was only a matter of seconds before Luke took me down, so I figured, what the heck. I tried the disarming maneuver. My blade hit the base of Luke's, and I twisted, putting my whole weight into a downward thrust. Clang! Luke's sword rattled against the stones. Yes! The tip of my blade was an inch from his undefended chest. The other campers were silent, kind of like Annabeth before the whole Clarice scene in the bathroom. What just happened? I lowered my sword. Sorry. For a moment, Luke was too stunned to speak. Sorry? His scarred face broke into a grin. By the gods, Percy, why are you sorry? Show me that again! I didn't want to. The short burst of manic energy had completely abandoned me, but Luke insisted. This time there was no contest. The moment our swords connected, Luke hit my hilt and sent my weapon skidding across the floor. After a long pause, somebody in the audience said, "Beginner's luck?" Luke wiped the sweat off his brow. He appraised me with an entirely new interest. Maybe, he said. But I wonder what Percy could do with a balanced sword. Like, if he could do this without a really good sword, what could he do with a really good one? Friday afternoon, I was sitting with Grover at the lake, resting from a near-death experience on the climbing wall. Grover had scampered to the top of the mountain, take two. Grover had scampered to the top like a mountain goat, but the lava had almost gotten me. My shirt had smoking holes in it. The hairs had been singed off my forearms. We sat on the pier watching the naiads do underwater basket weaving, until I got up the nerve to ask Grover how his conversation had gone with Mr. D. His face turned a sickly shade of yellow. Fine, he said. Just great. So your career's still on track? He glanced at me nervously. Chiron told you I wanted a searcher's license? Well, no. I had no idea what a searcher's license was. But it didn't seem like the right time to ask. He just said you had big plans, and that you needed credit for completing a keeper's assignment. So did you get it? Grover looked down at the naiads. Mr. D suspended judgment. He said I hadn't failed or succeeded with you yet, so our fates were still tied together. If you got a quest and I went along to protect you, and we both came back alive, then maybe he'd consider the job complete. My spirits lifted. Well, that's not so bad, right? Blah! He might as well have transferred me to stable cleaning duty. The chances of you getting a quest, and even if you did, why would you want me along? Of course I'd want you along. Grover stared glumly into the water. Basket weaving. Must be nice to have a useful skill. I tried to reassure him that he had lots of talents, but that just made him look more miserable. We talked about canoeing and sword play for a while, then debated the pros and cons of different gods. Finally, I asked him about the 4 empty cabins. Number 8, the silver one, belongs to Artemis, he said. She vowed to be a maiden forever, so of course, no kids. The cabin is, honorary. If she didn't have one, she'd be mad. Yeah, okay, but the other 3, the ones at the end, are those the big 3? Grover tensed. We were getting close to a touchy subject. No. One of them, number 2, is Eras, he said. That's another honorary thing. She's a goddess of marriage, so of course she wouldn't go around having affairs with mortals. That's her husband's job. When we say big 3, we mean the 3 powerful brothers, the sons of Kronos, who is the Titan. Zeus, Poseidon, Hades. Right. After the great battle with the Titans, they took over the world from their dad and drew lots to decide who got what. Zeus got the sky, I remembered. Poseidon the sea. Hades, the underworld. Uh-huh. But Hades doesn't have a cabin here. No, he doesn't have a throne in Olympus either. He sort of does his own thing down in the underworld. Well, if he did have a cabin here, Grover shuddered, it wouldn't be pleasant. Let's just leave it at that. But Zeus and Poseidon, they both had like a bazillion kids in the myths. Why are their cabins empty? Grover shifted his hose uncomfortably. About 60 years ago, after World War II, the big three agreed they wouldn't sire any more heroes. Their children were just too powerful. They were affecting the course of human events too much, causing too much carnage. World War II, was basically a fight between the sons of Zeus and Poseidon on one side and the sons of Hades on the other. The winning side, Zeus and Poseidon, made Hades swear an oath with them no more affairs with mortal women. They all swore on the river Styx. Thunder boomed. I said, "That's the most serious oath you can make." Grover nodded. "And the brothers kept their word? No kids?" Grover's face darkened. 17 years ago, Zeus fell off the wagon. There was this TV starlet with big, fluffy 80s hairdo. He just couldn't help himself. When their child was born, a little girl named Thalia, well, the river Styx is serious about promises. Zeus himself got off easy because he's immortal, but he brought a terrible fate on his daughter. But that isn't fair. It wasn't the little girl's fault. Grover hesitated. Percy, children of the big three have powers greater than other half-bloods. They have a strong aura, a scent that attracts monsters. When Hades found out about the girl, he wasn't too happy about Zeus breaking his oath. Hades let the worst monsters out of Tartarus to torment Thalia. A satyr was assigned to be her keeper when she was 12, but there was nothing he could do. He tried to escort her here with a couple other half-bloods she befriended. They almost made it. They got all the way to the top of the hill. He pointed across the valley to the pine tree where I'd fought the Minotaur. All three kindly ones were after them, along with a horde of hellhounds. They were about to be overrun when Thalia told her satyr to take the other two half-bloods to safety while she held off the monsters. She was wounded and tired and didn't want to live like a hunted animal. The satyr didn't want to leave her, but couldn't change her mind, and he had to protect the others. So Thalia made her final stand alone at the top of the hill. As she died, Zeus took pity on her. He turned her into a pine tree. Her spirit still helps protect the borders of the valley. That's why the hill is called Half-Blood Hill. I stared at the pine in the distance. The story made me feel hollow, and guilty too. A girl my age had sacrificed herself to save her friends. She had faced a whole army of monsters. Next to that, my victory over the Minotaur didn't seem like much. I wondered if I'd acted differently. Could I have saved my mother? "Grover," I said, "have heroes ever gone on quests to the underworld?" "Sometimes," he said. "Orpheus, Hercules, Houdini." "And have they ever returned somebody from the dead?" "No, never. Orpheus came close. Percy, you're not seriously thinking—" "No," I lied. "I was just wondering, so a satyr is always assigned to guard a demigod?" Grover studied me warily. I hadn't persuaded him that I'd really dropped the underworld idea. "Not always. We go undercover to a lot of schools. We try to sniff out the half-bloods who have the makings of a great hero. If we find one with a very strong aura, like a child of the big three, we alert Chiron. He tries to keep an eye on them since they could cause real huge problems." We'll continue here tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. Hope everything is going well. Hang in there, you guys. Thanks again for all of your hard work. I really appreciate it. We'll see you soon. I miss you.